Hey, what's going on, DDO players? Axel here. In this video, I'll be discussing the new Epic Destiny feats and the new general feats that will be coming to DDO with Update 29. These feats are different from the legendary feats I discussed in a prior video. Now, I'm going to start with the Epic Destiny feats, just like the prior videos I've uploaded today. Check out the description below for a link to a developer forum post, and you can read these on your own or follow along with me as I go through the various feats in this video. Here's what Steelstar had to say in this recent developer forum post. At level 29, you get your third Epic Destiny feat. Like the one you get at level 28, you can pick from any of the previous Epic Destiny feats you qualify for, as well as from a list of new options only available at level 29. These require 3 total destinies, though unlike previous feats, most of these require destinies from multiple spheres. So that's the end of the quote. So all of these feats, as I understand it, are only available at level 29. But at level 29, if you want, you don't have to take one of these. You can take a prior Epic Destiny feat, one of the older Epic Destiny feats that we've had in the game. But these in particular are only available at level 29. And as Steelstar mentioned in that quote, these require that you have multiple destinies capped. All of them appear to be 3 different destinies. And if you want to check out the link, you can see what specific destinies you need for the specific feat that you might be interested in. I'm going to start at the top and go through all of these feats. The first one is Wind Through the Trees. When enemies hit or miss you, they have a 5% chance to be knocked down with no save. This may only trigger once every 12 seconds. This is a nice little built-in crowd control ability. It's something that would be useful to any class. I'm not sure that I'm too interested in this personally, just because for me the biggest problem or the biggest threat in this game tends to be spike damage. So a 5% chance to crowd control an enemy doesn't really appeal to me too much as far as defense goes. Now it is useful, generally useful. It's a nice little built-in crowd control thing, but I think that I'd be attracted to other feats more. But it certainly is a nice feat, and you certainly could take it as nothing it's not a bad feat by any means. The next one is Dire Charge. Charge forward at the targeted foe. That foe and all nearby foes are subject to +2 weapon damage and must take a fortitude save or be stunned. Stun DC is 20 plus highest ability modifier plus bonus to stun attacks. Now, I'm a little confused about this one. I'm not sure if this is the same ability as the Vanguard charge ability, or if it shares a cooldown with it, or how that works, but it's a nice little ability if you do have a melee that's built for tactics and you don't have the Vanguard ability, or if you're not a Vanguard build. Now, I don't. Again, as I said, I don't know if the Vanguard ability shares a cooldown with this or not. If it doesn't, then it might be worth taking this if you are a Vanguard. But if of course if they share a cooldown, then you wouldn't want to take it as a Vanguard. But again, it's a CC ability. It looks decent. And as you'll see, as I go through these feats, you'll see that the developers are trying to introduce more support in the game for both DC casting and tactics DC abilities. There's been constant feedback on the forums that DC casting and DC tactics have fallen behind and aren't very useful. So they're definitely making an effort in these new feats, and also the legendary feats I discussed in a prior video to help those DC-based abilities and spells. The next feat is Arcane Pulse, which requires 3 arcane destinies. It's a spell, and the description is a magical pulse of force reverberates through the target's body, dealing 3d6 plus 6 force damage every 2 seconds for a duration of 16 seconds. This spell can stack on the target up to 5 times, increasing the damage with each stack. So basically, this is our new dot, which if you don't know what dot stands for, it's damage over time. And dot spells are things like 9x Biting Cold for arcane casters, things like Divine Punishment for your divine casters. These are spells that being cast on enemies multiple times and do damage over time. So they're specifically useful for any mob that has tons of health, which means bosses more or less. These are your boss killers. And the heroic dots have not really scaled into epics and have fallen behind, and the developers are responding to that by offering this new dot. Now, I personally would have rather seen more focus on scaling up the older dots rather than just adding one dot for everybody here. I think this homogenizes classes a little bit if everyone's going to be casting the same dot, but this for sure looks like a must if you're going to be a arcane caster. Now, that's pending the math. I'm assuming this is going to be a very good ability when the math is all dialed out, and I'm not going to do that. I'm sure other people will do that, but if this turns out to be the dot we're all expecting it to be, then you'll want to take it on your arcane caster for boss fights. Let's move on to the next one feat, which is Defiant Warding. When you take damage, add 1 stack of Defiant Warding plus 1 sacred bonus to MMR. This effect can stack up to 30 times. 1 stack is removed every 3 seconds. So what this does is it's a defensive ability, sort of a tanking ability. Every time you take damage, you gain MRR, which I don't know how practical this ability is. It might be useful for tanks, specifically since they've been taking MRR away from heavy armor builds. This might help supplement some of that. And 30 MMR is quite a bit, but I don't know how practical this is. And I think for most people, they're going to want to take DPS instead of a defensive ability like this. But for a dedicated tank, this is this is very possible you might want to take this. But I don't think other classes are going to particularly be attracted to this more than they would other feats. The next feat is Dreamscape. Activate to pop off to the land of dreams. You are invulnerable and invisible for 5 seconds, and then return with a random 30-second buff. And it has a 1-minute cooldown. So this is kind of interesting. It gives you a brief amount of invulnerability, and then you get a random 30-second buff. Now, like I discussed last video, the randomness here is probably going to make it not very practical, but this is a very fun feat, if nothing else, and fun is very important in this game, obviously. So if you have a character and you just think this would be fun to have, then do it. I don't like that it's a clicky that you have to activate. I wish this was a proc that happened passively. That would make this a lot better. But for what it is, it looks pretty cool and interesting. The next feat is Harbinger of Chaos. With weapon and unarmed attacks, deal 1d6 Bane damage against all targets and an additional 2d20 Chaos damage against lawful targets. This scales with melee or range power depending on your weapons. I don't know how good the damage is going to be, if it's going to be worth it. It seems a little weak to take a whole feat for just a little bit of 1d20 or 2d20, and these are alignment based, so it's not going to work depending on the enemy alignment. Like the chaos damage wouldn't proc against enemies immune to chaos damage. Same with lawful targets. So I'm not sure how this is going to work, but we'll see. I'm not sure that this will be a great feat, but pending the math, it might be okay. The next one is Fount of Life. It gives you plus 20 healing amp and positive spell power. I think we need more. I don't think this particular feat is strong enough to warrant taking it. If it was more like plus 40 healing amp and plus 40 positive spell power, it would be more attractive, but you can get healing amp in a lot of places, same with positive spell power, so I'm not sure that this will be a very popular feat. Next feat is Embodiment of Order. With weapon and unarmed attacks, deal 10 Bane damage against all targets with an additional 20 law damage against chaotic targets. This scales with melee or range power. Again, pending the math, I don't know how good this will be, especially since it doesn't work against enemies of certain alignments. Next is Spirit Blades. This is a spell. Create a series of spectral blades which fly at a nearby opponent. Each of these 5 blades does 2d piercing and 1d force damage. Depending on how this works, it says it's 5 blades, so this could be quite a bit of damage. I really don't have an opinion on this. This is a caster feat, and it really just all depends on the math, how much damage this actually does. And until I have a chance to try it out, I'm not going to be able to give an opinion on it. Now, the last feat is called Arcane Warrior, and this is my favorite feat. I'm not sure how good it will be, but it's really interesting, and I think it helps support certain builds that are lacking in the game right now. Here's what this feat does. Your weapon and unarmed attacks grant you a stack of Arcane Warrior Magical, which gives you +1 universal spell power. Your offensive spells grant you a stack of Arcane Warrior Physical, which gives you a +1 melee and range power bonus. Each of these stacks up to 20 times, and each stack lasts for 6 seconds. You may gain a stack of each, no more than once per second. So that's a little confusing, but what this does is every time you cast an offensive spell, you get bonuses to your melee abilities, and every time you use your melee abilities, you hit a target, you gain a bonus to your offensive casting abilities. So this feat supports a battle caster, maybe an Eldritch Knight, maybe a battle cleric, tunes that are going to be switching between offensive casting and melee. I think that's really cool. Abilities like battle clerics and Eldritch Knights have fallen behind a bit in the game, especially Eldritch Knights. It's just not flat out not very good, and it's cool that we have a feat that supports switching between offensive casting and melee. I wish that this kind of build was more practical than what we have in DDO today, where you for the most part want to go all out casting or all out melee. You can't really have a viable tune, if we're talking end game epic elite stuff, really have that good of a tune that does both, in my opinion. So it's nice to see that a feat here that supports that. I don't think this will necessarily be enough to really help those builds, bring them up to viability, but it's nice that they're adding in more support for those builds. And personally, I'm wondering if Cleric Aura counts as an offensive spell. If it does, then this is going to be amazing for battle clerics. I'm thinking it won't, but if your Aura procs the Arcane Warrior Physical, then this is effectively going to let battle clerics run around with +20 melee power and +20 range power, which would be very, very nice. So that's all for the Epic Destiny feats. Now I'm going to move on to the other feats. Coming into the game, we're going to have 2 new minimum level 21 general feats. Each of these feats adds 110 maximum spell points, and each of them provides a burst option for either a DC build, casting build, or a nuking casting build. The first one's called Wellspring of Power. You activate this ability to gain a +150 universal spell power increase and +20% spell critical damage for 30 seconds, and it has a 3-minute cooldown. The next one is called Arcane Insight. Activate to gain +6 to all spell DCs and +6 to spell penetration for 30 seconds. It's a 3-minute cooldown. So these feats give you a really nice burst option for your casters. We're continuing to see this trend of more support for casters and DC-based abilities in epics, because developers obviously have heard feedback that these classes and builds are falling behind. So this is a really nice burst DPS option, especially the spell critical damage and universal spell power one. It could be really nice, especially when you add it on top of the new dot that I discussed earlier. Let's move on to the new minimum level 24 general feats. In each of these feats I go over also grants +140 maximum spell points. The first one's called Improve Augment Summoning. It requires Augment Summoning. Your summoned creatures have +8 to all ability scores, +10% dodge, and +100 maximum hit points. And this is really interesting. I talked about this in my Legendary Feats video a bit. This feat supports summons in addition to the legendary feat that supports summons, and I'm really interested to see what a summon dedicated build can do, because for whatever reason the developers decided they want to support summoning. So we've seen new in-game feats, both legendary and these other feats, to support augment summoning. So add that with enhancements, druid past lives and such. You could come up with this. I'm really interested to see how good a summon build could be, and I'm sure some players will give it a shot, and I'm looking forward to seeing how it does. The next feat's called Burst of Glacial Wrath. It's a cone spell which deals 3d6 cold damage and freezes the creature. Fortitude save 20 plus the highest of your intelligence, wisdom, or chaw modifier. And if the enemy makes this save, it negates the freeze portion. So a cool little spell option for your cold spell casters. I might have to look into this on my my sorcerer, because he's an ice savant. The next feat is Intensify Spell. It's a meta magic which adds plus 75 spell power, and spells cost plus 25% spell points. It works on any spell affected by Empower. So basically, this is an epic version of Empower. It stacks stacks on top of Empower, and it will further increase your spell power for these spells. The next feat is called Emboldened Spell. It's also a meta magic. It adds plus 2 DCs to all spells with DCs. But these spells will cost an additional 10 spell points. So very cool. More DC increases we're seeing for these type of builds. And I'm wondering if you can. I'm not sure if you can apply this to your SLAs or not. I'm assuming yes. Now the next few feats we have, they are feats that remove the maximum caster levels on certain heroic spells. The aim here seems to be to make these spells useful in epics because of the maximum caster level we've seen on many heroic spells, they have not been useful in epics. So the first feat is called Master of Air. Your Shocking Grasp, Electric Loop, and Lightning Bolt spells no longer have a maximum caster level. The next feat, Master of Earth. Your Acid Spray, Acid Arrow, and Acid Blast spells no longer have a maximum caster level. Master of Water. Your Cold Ray, Snowball Storm, and 9x Batting Cold spells no longer have a maximum caster level. Master of Fire. Your Burning Hands, Scorch, and Fireball spells no longer have a maximum caster level. Master of the Dead. Your Chill Touch, Necrotic Ray, and Negative Energy Burst spells no longer have a maximum caster level. Master of Light. Your Sunbolt, Searing Light, and Sunburst spells no longer have a maximum caster level. Master of Artifice. Your Static Shock, Lightning Sphere, Blast Rod, and Lightning Mote spells no longer have maximum caster levels. Master of the Wilds. Your Produce Flame, Creeping Cold, Call Lightning, and Word of Balance spells no longer have a maximum caster level. Master of Music. Your Shout, Greater Shout, Sonic Blast, Reverberate spells no longer have a maximum caster level. Master of Knowledge. Your Arcane Bolt and Arcane Blast spells now grant you 1 stack. Oh, I'm sorry. This one's actually a little different. This feat is called Master of Knowledge. Your Arcane Bolt and Arcane Blast spells now grant you 1 stack of Mental Honing. Mental Honing gives you plus 3 universal spell power, plus 2% spell critical damage when cast. This effect is stacked up to 30 times. And 1 stack is removed every 6 seconds. So that's cool. This gives you a little bit of spell critical and spell power bonuses when you cast these specific Arcane Bolt and Arcane Blast spells. If you don't remember, those Arcane Bolt and Arcane Blast, those are the enhancements in the Archmage Wizard tree. So it gives you a little bit more incentive to use those SLA enhancements and use them. I welcome that because I found personally on my Wizard those 2 spells to be a bit lacking and not worth the APs. Let's move now down to a new minimum level general feat called Greater Ruin. This requires the Ruin. It does not replace it though, according to what I'm reading. This is basically a better version of Ruin. It deals 1,000 untyped damage to a single enemy. There is no saving throw, and it costs 150 spell points. Again, this is following the trend of more support for casters. There's also a slew of changes for artificers. There's 2 new feats. The first one's called Improved Construct Essence. And this one has been players been asking for this forever. This requires 12 Artificer levels and Construct Essence. And this improves your base repair to 70 as well as Rust vulnerability. So what Construct Essence does, say you're an Artificer, but you're a human. Generally, without these types of feats, Construct Essence feats or Improved Construct Essence, you would not be able to benefit from the repair spells. But you can take the original Construct Essence feat, and this makes it so repair spells heal you for 50% of what they would a construct. What that feat does is basically turns you partially into a construct. And this Improved Construct Essence feat is adding on top of that. It's changing it from 50% up to 70% benefit you can get from the repair spells. And then the next feat, called Construct Exemplar, it builds upon this even more. This one's minimum level 21. Improved Construct Essence was required only 12 Artificer levels in Construct Essence, so you could take that one in Heroics. This one, Construct Exemplar, you can only take in Epics. You have to wait until minimum level 21. What this does is it considers you a living construct instead of your original race. So if you're human and you take construct exemplar, then you can benefit from repair spells just as much as a construct can. You get 100% base healing from repair spells and 100% damage from rust. So yes, you get the healing benefits from repair spells, but you also take the rust vulnerability as well. You also get all of the other construct benefits because you are considered a construct once you take this feat. You have immunity to sleep, hold person, energy drain, nauseated, exhausted, and paralyzed effects, just like a regular construct. You also have immunity to ability score damage from natural poisons and natural diseases, but are vulnerable to those that specifically affect wood or metal. This is similar to other constructs. Additionally, you get a plus 10 racial bonus to saving throws against magical poisons and do not fail saving throws against them on a roll of 1. Also, like a construct, take this feat and you can breathe underwater indefinitely without the need for a underwater action item. That's pretty nice. Saves you a inventory slot. When resting at a rest shrine, the health you regain is now based on your repair skill instead of your heal skill. So, all in all, this feat turns you into a construct if you are not one. So, definitely helpful for a few races like humans that want to go with artificers, their class. One last note is that in Update 29, the DC for rune arms will benefit from all sources of evocation bonuses. This isn't really a feat, but the developers wanted to put it in this post. So all in all, what do I think about this? These feats are great. We're seeing more and more support for casting builds, seeing a lot more options to increase your DCs, a lot more options to use more spells and epics. I really like the general feats on minimum level 24 where the developers are removing the maximum caster levels for certain spells. This is something that players complained about forever. And then when it comes to the construct feats for artificers, this is something that's been asked for a while, and I think it's fair. It gives you a little bit more leeway to go human instead of like Warforged or Bladeforged for artificers. So very, very cool. Guys, please comment below and let me know what you think about these feats, the general feats and the Epic Destiny feats. That's all for today. I will see you all next time.